Okay, to make this pumpkin, you're going to need a row counter. Again, I've used this one a million times. I can just turn the dial, to reset it, or I can click it, and then I can just use this to reset it. And again, I can click it. I like this kind. It's kind of more like a sports tally counter versus an actual like knitting counter. Let me get it back to 0. Okay, obviously you're going to need your looming tool. This I got from Knitting Board, so if you're interested, it's actually a pretty good one. A little more comfortable on the hands now that I'm getting older, it seems. Then we're going to need our scissors. We're going to need some batting, anything for like the filling of the pumpkin. And then obviously our yarn, we're going to use this Red Heart Dark Orchard color. It's a weight of 4. It'll work really well in the loom I'm going to show you that we're going to use. I also have this newspaper print, which is another Red Heart Saver yarn. And again, it'll kind of go between the black, the gray, and kind of like the white color, which I thought was kind of nice. And it makes this a different type of pumpkin. I'd love to see what colors you guys choose. And the loom we're going to use is from this set, which is from Knitting Board as well. It is the Baby Knit Looms. It came with this little tiny one and the one we're going to be using. This has 24 pegs, and the one we're going to be using has 56 pegs. And it has a 3/8 gauge, which is kind of nice. So again, if you do not have these looms, you can still do this project by finding a loom that is as similar to it as you can. Basically, you want one that is going to have it where the gauge is small enough that you can get away with one strand of yarn. And obviously, we will still need crochet hooks. We will most likely be using this one or possibly this one, depending on when we get to the end. So that's all you kind of need to make this project. Again, if you do not have this loom, don't get upset. Just find one that is as close to it as you can. That kind of gives you that idea of being able to use just one strand of yarn. And then also you will need a bunch of stitch markers for a middle project. These I've used a lot before, so as you can tell, they kind of hook together. So we're ready to make this pumpkin. Again, I like the fact that it's a different, non-traditional color pumpkin, but obviously go ahead and do it in colors that you want to do it in, like if you want it more traditional. And there is one more thing. Last thing you're going to need is pipe cleaners of some sort in the color that you want to use. I'm going to be using the purple one, the bluish purple one, because I just thought that was kind of cute. But again, whatever color you want. If you're sticking more traditional, then you'll probably want to use a green. But I want to do something different, as I said. So we're going to start out by doing our drawstring cast on. And what we're going to do for that, if you're not familiar with it, which some of you are, if you are familiar, go ahead and do the drawstring cast on. All you do with that is I leave myself a pretty wide, long tail. This tail later will be what we pull to kind of close this off. With the drawstring, you basically work and then you start pulling your starting string, and it will kind of close off the loom. And that's what we're going for in order to have the size of the pumpkin we want. So we're going to leave ourselves a tail, probably anywhere from, 8 inches to 12 inches depending. Just because I know me, sometimes I might accidentally pull, and then that's going to leave me a smaller tail. Because you're just going to let this hang, there's nothing you attach it to. I mean, if this had a little knob on it, you could do a small slip knot and attach it there and still leave yourself some slack if you're worried about pulling it all the way through. But this loom, as you can tell, doesn't. This red mark you see was what I put on it. I showed this in a previous video when I was reviewing these, I believe. I just made a little notch in the loom, covered it with a little red paint, and then covered it with some Mod Podge to seal it in, because it didn't really, that I could see anywhere on this, have a way for you to know where your starting peg is, which is, I feel, very important. Maybe they'll remake these. Let me know if you come across any from Knitting Board that do carry some sort of knob or whatever. So for the drawstring, you basically work your way back and forth. And again, I have my tail kind of off to the side, and this is my starting peg. I'm going to work my way back and forth on this pegs, all the way around, just working my way, as you can see, back and forth. So every other peg is the one that just goes behind. So we're going to work our way back to the beginning. Okay, we're getting back to the beginning. Again, we got our working tail. We're just going to keep this tail kind of out of our way off to the side, and we're going to continue going back and forth until we get to the starting peg. Now, what we're going to do here is we're going to have our last peg and our first peg. You can see I'm just going to lay this in front. That's going to be ready for the next step. And we're going to lay it in front of these pegs. And as you can see, by doing that, some of them look like they have 2 strands, and then the other pegs look like they have 1. Wherever there is where it looks like there's 2 strands, knit the bottom over the top. So just, and being mindful of your working yarn over here, just kind of leave it off to the side. If you want to, you can actually now kind of tuck it behind the loom, because again, it's going to be on the inside of the loom anyway, so you can move that working tail to the inside and work your way around now, just knitting over wherever there's 2 strands. If you saw how I pulled too much, just gently pull this and it'll kind of help get that back in place, or you can just kind of move it around. The best thing you can do to kind of lock stuff in is just kind of hold and then gently pull this up so you're not pulling it too much up as you work your way around the pegs. So as you see, I'm just looking where there's 2 strands and I'm just knitting that over. Alright, as we get closer to the beginning, what we're going to do is we're going to do 1 row of E-wrap when we get back to the beginning to help lock this in place before we do the next stitch I'm going to do. This just makes it a little easier when working with the drawstring cast on for me to lock it in with an E-wrap row. Alright, so we've got our last one right here, because again, this is our starting page, so we got the one next to it that needs to get knit over. Alright, now take your working yarn and just go ahead and just E-wrap the pegs, pushing the stuff down as you need to out of your way. And I'm going to quickly just lock this in. E-wrap. Up. E-wrap. Okay, so I'm going to go around and I'm just going to work my E-wrap knit. Okay, so continue working the E-wrap knit till you get back to the beginning. Alright, we are back to the beginning, so I just got a couple more rows here to do in the E-wrap knit. Okay, now what I want you to do is push all the loom down on all the pegs, if it's not already down. And what we're going to do is 1 row of the true knit in this color before we switch. The true knit will give you a tighter stitch than the E-wrap knit. So for the true knit, it's opposite of what you do for purl. That's how I kind of remember it. So with purl, we tend to go under the loop, and we end up doing our loop like this. Like for purl, we tend to go like this. And we make our loop typically this way with purl. We go like this, we go like this, we take this loop and put it on the peg. Well, with true knit, you want to do it above your yarn that's on there and go in it, grab it, pull it out so you have a loop, and then take this loop and put it back on the peg. Okay, let me zoom in here more for you to see. Okay, so again, we have our working yarn above our pegs. Okay, so we're going to go in the bottom, grab it, turn it, create a new loop, and then take this whole thing off the peg and place our new loop on. And we're going to work this all the way around the peg for 1 row. So this is kind of like what's going to make it a little tighter stitch and makes it easier for the batting and stuff to go in the pumpkin to not really be seen too much outside of it. If I did this whole thing in E-wrap, there would be more gaps, and I don't want as many gaps in the pumpkin because of putting the batting in. So again, we're working yarns above the loops that are on the pegs, and we're going to work in, come up to the working yarn, turn so that we can create our loop right here, and then we go ahead and we remove that completely off the peg. Okay, and we put it back on, and then we pull this. Don't pull it super tight, otherwise it's going to make it hard to knit over the next time. So you just kind of want to pull it gently so it's somewhat snug on there, but not to the point where it's going to cause problems with knitting over. So I'm going to work that all the way around until we get back to our starting point. So again, do the true knit until you get back to the beginning. Okay, we're on our last one. Again, working through the peg, up, grabbing the working yarn, bringing it down, creating that loop, and taking it off and putting on the peg. So now comes the part where we're going to work switching the colors to get our base, our main color, but we're also going to need a bunch of stitch markers, and we're going to place these stitch markers on first before we change color. Now what I like about mine is that they do lock. Let me get one that's a better color for you guys to see. They do lock, so that makes it really nice to kind of be able to put on when you've already got yarn on the peg. But if you didn't have those kind, you can try to lift up the loop and drop it down on there. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go 4 pegs, 1, 2, 3, 4 with stitch markers, and then 4 without. 4 with stitch markers, 4 without. So that way we can create a little more of a pumpkin effect. And we're going to be alternating between the purl stitch and the knit stitch to get the ridging of our pumpkin. So first we need to place our stitch markers on. These I can just kind of loop around. I'm sorry for the colors. I should have probably got them all one color, but you'll kind of be able to tell. Whatever stitch markers you have, go ahead and place 4 on, then 4, then skip 4, and then 4 on again. So, and of course when I'm trying to do this on camera, my fingers aren't going to work. So I'm going to quickly go off camera and I'm going to place 1, 2, 3, 4 stitch markers. Then I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4 empty spaces, and then again 1, 2, 3, 4 of the stitch markers. So let me go do that, and you do it at the same time, and we'll come back to change colors and move on. Okay, so I went around and I put my stitch markers again 1, 2, 3, 4 in a row. Then I skipped 1, 2, 3, 4. Then I did 1, 2, 3, 4. Skipped 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Skipped 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And 1, 2, 3, 4. Now the reason I just went around there, because you're thinking, well, it's obvious, is I was also doing this as a moment to double check my work. So it's kind of important before we start getting into what we're doing on which pegs, is that we make sure we have our stitch markers lined up. Again, if you're using a different loom that does not have this amount of pegs, you may need to adjust how many have stitch markers on and how many don't, to give yourself that kind of even amount. So again, it's 4 on, 4 off. So now what we're going to do is we're going to change our color, and then we're going to be alternating what we do on the pegs with the stitch markers and the pegs without it. But first we want to change our color to our newsprint again. Now when I made a sample of this pumpkin, it kind of self-striped. I'm curious if it's going to do it again or if it's going to change up a little bit, but that's what's kind of cool about doing a non-traditional pumpkin. And then we need our scissors, and we're going to tie as close to the beginning of this yarn as we can. So we're going to cut our tail, making sure you grab the right tail. Again, you're going to have one tail that's hanging down. This is what we're going to use to pull on later. As you can see, we're going to pull on this to help close off the loom. So make sure that you're grabbing the right one. That's your current working yarn. Cut it, that off to the side. And now we're going to tie this. And there's other ways to join. This is just the method I've been doing for years, and it's more my comfort level, but if you know of another way to join them without a knot or something, go ahead and do that as well. Okay, and I'm going to try to go down as close to it as I can. And I usually like to double knot. Okay, it might not be like I said, as super close, but it's close enough. And now what we're going to do is on the pegs that we have our stitch markers, we're going to do the true knit. On the pegs that we don't, we're going to do our purl, and we're going to rotate, do that around for this many rows until we're ready to take the pumpkin off. And again, change this up any way that you want. So with the true knit, remember the yarn is working on top, keeping your straggles out of the way. And just make sure you're being mindful of when you're doing the true knit And when you're doing the purl, it's very easy to get into a rhythm and then be like, oh shoot, I did the wrong thing on the wrong peg. So remember, true knit, you come up, grab the working yarn, make a loop. Okay, we have our loop, and then we take it off and we put it on the peg. Again, we have our yarn. And of course, when you're doing this, you're going to be holding things obviously better. This is just the best way for me to hold it for the camera angle. So again, I'm coming up, I'm turning till I create my loop. And depending on your stitch markers, it will determine whether or not you have something in your way. But the true knit is best to do on the ones with the stitch marker. Okay, we got 2 more to do. This is also a little more time consuming than doing the E-wraps, but at the same time we want a tighter stitch so that the stuffing does not fall out. The rows you're going to be doing are going to take you a little bit of time, so don't think this project is super quick. I found that it took me quite a while to do the sample one up that I was using to do this part here, so bear that in mind. Even though it looks like it's pretty simple, it's a little tricky. So our last peg here with our true knit. Okay, and then we're taking it off and placing it on the peg. Now we're going to do purl on the ones that aren't. This is helping to create the ridge like that you see around a pumpkin. So now for the purl stitch, for those that may not know or need a little refresher course like I almost had to do, okay, is we're going from the top of the loop down, working yarn over, twist it, bring it up. Oops, let me do that again because it frayed the yarn a little bit. So we're coming down, grabbing our working yarn, turning it, making our loop at the top now, and doing the same thing as a true knit where we take it off and place that new loop on. Okay, I'm just gonna, okay. And again, so for the purl, we have our yarn below the working yarn that's on the peg, not above it, and we're coming down, grabbing it, turning it, creating our loop that we're going to take off and put on the peg. Okay. And that little noise you might have heard was my Fitbit watch telling me I should be moving right now. I am moving. I'm loom knitting. Alright, last one that we do the purl on for this section. Alright, so all you're going to do is repeat this process. True knit on the ones with your stitch marker, purl on the ones without. And again, we're going to work that around in the round until we're ready to get to the next part, which will involve closing off the loom a little bit with the drawstring and getting ready to take the pumpkin off the loom. So go ahead and do what I said at the beginning of this section. Again, do this many rows right there, and then we'll come back and we'll be ready to kind of do the next final steps to get this pumpkin off the loom. Okay, after doing our 25 rows, this is roughly what it'll look like. I did start pulling a little bit just to make sure it was going to work in terms of how much I need to still knit. But as you pull it, as you can see, it closes it off. So I gotta continue pulling it so it closes this part right here off. So gently pull, don't go too hard, but gently pull it through until you start seeing it close that off. But again, I don't want to pull too tight because if I break this yarn, I'll be up the creek without a paddle. So we're just being more mindful. If it doesn't want to go through anymore, we're going to have a way to fix that to make sure it closes off. Now normally this is not fighting me this much, so I don't know why it's not. There we go. Right. So you're going to gently pull on it, kind of working it through. Now if you can't get it to close all the way, we're not going to worry about making it super tight on the close because we're going to be able to use our crochet hook, which is a G, make sure, yeah, it's a G one. That's what we're going to use. We can use that to close off this if it doesn't want to close all the way. Like you said, this side's a little more gappy, but again, that's okay. We can just use our crochet hook because I have had to do that before where if it doesn't want to close off all the way over here, which again, sometimes I don't know why it doesn't do it, it's still not going to matter because we're just kind of working it through. Sometimes it just could be the yarn itself not wanting to cooperate. That has happened a lot of times to me where the yarn normally works well, but this time it wants to fight me a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the method I usually do where I close it off as much as I can, and then I use my crochet hook to go ahead and bring it to the other side. So I'm going to close it off where I use this to bring my yarn to the other side of the project, and then this way I can start to close it off in a different way. So you tighten as much as you can the drawstring way, as much as the yarn will cooperate, and then you kind of just thread it through the other sides. Because remember, this side is going to be our outside. So it doesn't matter how it looks on the inside. And it doesn't matter that if the part that's going to be like the top of the pumpkin looks wonky, because I don't want it to look nice and neat like a traditional, you know, pumpkin that you see Loom. I want it to have some character, because that's kind of fun when you go to a pumpkin patch or whatever and you see those weird looking pumpkins. They're kind of fun to look at because they're not super perfect. So we're going for that with this. So is this just fraying? Okay, that's fraying, so we need to do it again. Okay. Again, I'm just finding a spot opposite from where the yarn is, and I'm pulling it through. And we'll see what that's doing is it's helping to close off this area. So you're just going to kind of work yourself around this opening. I'm going to get a different crochet hook. I think that one's just not the right one for this project. So I'm going to go to whatever the size lower is I have on hand, which will be this one, which is a E. I think it's an E. Yeah, I think it's an E. Alright, I'm going to use a smaller one because for some reason that big one was not cooperating. So again, I'm looking for an area off of the off the opposite side of where the yarn ends up, and we're kind of just sewing it closed. So you'll want it to be where it's going to be closed enough. See, we're kind of getting still our somewhat circle at the top for the stem to go in, but we're not caring, like I said, about being a perfect circle. I think if I would have did different stitches at the beginning, it probably, maybe they were just a little too tight or something. And like I said, some yarn just doesn't cooperate as well with the drawstring. So sometimes it can work really great, other times it can say, hey, let me give you problems. So like I said, this is another method to just close it off once you pulled it closed as much as you can. So as you can see, we're doing that, and then you can just check it. And once you don't see any gaps like anything before, like I'm looking and I'm going, oh, I better put one over here because I can see, I can see right here that there's a gap. So I definitely want to make sure I do some yarn over this way as well. And once you feel, and you can always check on the other side, that it's closed off enough for you, that you don't see too many gaps here, then we're good to go to actually tie this off. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go, again, opposite from where the yarn's coming out. Pull it through, but this time I'm not going to pull it all the way through because I want to tie this off. And that's just a little there. So once we get it through enough, I'm going to give myself, because see, that's why we have such a long tail afterwards, is for this part where we're going to bring it through, okay, and we're going to tie it. Again, that's what having a long tail is for. So you're going to tie it, and now we have two, let me back up here so you can see, we've got two strands that we can kind of work through to tie off this project a little bit. So I'm going to go over here. Oh, I think I grabbed the wrong one. That's why I'm struggling. I grabbed the wrong, there we go. We're going to go over here, we're going to grab our new like working tail, pull it through. Oh, it got caught on my project. Okay, and then we're going to again go ahead and tie these two. And that's all you're going to do to kind of help tie it off. And again, just go ahead, flip it over, and check that it is as closed off as you can on the top, because again, that's going to be our top of our pumpkin. And I think we're pretty good, so we're just going to do one more knot just to secure it. And then we're going to take our scissors and we're just going to trim it and get that out of the way. And you can also, if you want, we don't have to worry about trimming this one because we're stuffing it, so anything on the inside will be hidden. But now, as you can see, we have the top of our pumpkin for when we start to fill it. Now we need to take this off the loom, and while we're taking this off the loom, I gotta find, there we go. Okay, and while we're taking it off the loom, we'll remove the stitch markers as we go. excuse me, to do this, we're going to do the gather bind off. So the first thing I can do is cut my working yarn. I'm going to make sure, again, that's about 12 inches. So I'd rather have too much than not enough. Okay, and then we're going to grab another piece. Again, probably, sometimes the technique you can do if you want to know how much of extra yarn for the garter or the gather bind off is kind of take a strand and run it around your loom. Okay, and if you kind of go around about 3 times, okay, will you get up there? Alright, so we got it about 3 times around roughly, and then I'm going to cut it. That'll give us enough to go around it for the gather bind off. Okay, remove it. Okay, so we have our extra yarn here. We're going to find the beginning, and we're going to work this through each peg. So let me lower us down here a little bit. Okay, and we got our looming tool to help. And we're going to put you over here. This is my little case for the stitch markers as I take them off. Get that out of my way, make sure nothing's in your way. Grab your working yarn, and you're just going to go into the loop, grab that new working yarn, pull it through. Oh, don't know why things are fighting me today. Alright. Okay, you can pull it, but remember, you're going to leave yourself a tail. Like this is a long tail that we have over here. You want to make sure, just like when we did the drawstring, that we're leaving some slack over here as we work around. Okay, and then you're going to go to the next one, do the same thing. Okay, pulling it all the way through. And like I said, you can pull this part, just keep an eye that you're giving yourself still a tail over here for when you're all done. And you're probably wondering, well, when am I going to take the stitch markers off? What I'm going to do, depending on which kind you use, obviously. These I could potentially pull off because, like I said, they're the ones that just join. They're the ones that just join. So once I did the 4 pegs, I can go back to the first one and knit it over. Knit the whole loop right off the peg. So when I'm done that, I can then, if I want to, just take the stitch markers off. Okay, and then I'm going to do the same thing to the ones that don't have it, the stitch markers, and just again work it all the way through, being mindful that I'm still again leaving my tail. I've got the tail I'm going to use at the end, and then I got the tail that I'm working with right now. I want to make sure I keep enough of it, but again, you'll know how much you need. You can pull it through, I would say you can pull it through till you have at least about 6 inches or so still dangling off the side. And then just be mindful that you don't accidentally pull it all the way through. So we're just going to end up working around the loom doing this. Pulling it all the way through. And pulling it all the way through. And then I keep checking back here to make sure I still have my tails so that I don't accidentally pull this one all the way through the loops and have nothing at the end. So again, work your way around to get back to the beginning and taking off your stitch markers as you go and making sure you keep your tail, and I'll show you taking it off completely, and then we get to stuff it and we get to put our pipe cleaner in as well. Okay, we got our last 2 to take off. Again, these are starting ones, and we got just 2 more pegs again all the way through. My yarn frayed a little bit on me when I was going around, but that's okay. It's not going to hurt anything for this yarn to be frayed during this process. Okay, we got our last 2. Now we can take our loops off, and now we no longer need the loom. So it kind of looks like a mess, I know, but now comes the fun part where we can stuff this, and we can also get our pipe cleaner. Again, I'm doing this kind of purplish blue one, because on camera it looks a little more blue. It's a little more purplish in person. And now what I want to do is flip this over first so I can get my pipe cleaner in before I close this off to make it the pumpkin. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave it big until I know exactly how much stem I want out, because I'm actually going to kind of twist the stem a little bit. So now we just need to, I should have did this the other way, but now I just kind of work it in, kind of like you're sewing it, so that goes into the bottom. one side. Now go ahead and loop the other side, working it into between the strands. Okay, I'm going to try to get it as close to the other one that it will let me go through. Okay, so now it's a matter of determining. I'm going to be pinching these together because I'm going to twist this, but I'm going to wait to make sure I don't want it longer, because that's something you can do. So we've got these here. When we need them, we can end up twisting this and bunching this off, or tying this off at the bottom once we know how big we want the actual stem to be. And then we're going to curl this up, and then of course we have our strands from before that we need to close this off, and we're going to just gently pull. And see, I was closing it off, but of course we're going to need to put our batting in soon, but we're just closing it off some to kind of get the starting of it. Okay, so I'm going to raise this up a little bit just so you guys can see a little better of what I'm doing. Alright, so we've got our pumpkin tail things there, we've got our gather bind off, and we're just kind of contemplating starting to close it off. So that we can figure out, okay, now we need to start kind of stuffing it, and we need to figure out how long of a stem you want. So again, I'm going on this side, and I'm trying to see how much of a stem do I want on this side, but I want to twist it just to give it a little more character. So I am twisting my pumpkin stem at the very end. I'm going to give it a little bend. So now my pumpkin stem has a little bit more character. Again, you can do it as big as you want. And now comes the idea of, like, do we want to, in the inside, just almost like you're tying these in a way. And I, as usual, usually do 2 knots. Okay. And then with it being a pipe cleaner, you can just readjust your stem. And again, you can make it a long stem if you want, so just adjust it before you trim these off. Again, they're going to be on the inside, so don't worry too much about them. Just kind of bend them down so that nobody actually accidentally gets poked by them. Okay, so we've got our stem. Now we need to stuff it. So grab your batting. I got caught on my watch. So we're going to grab the batting, and since I'm not sure how much we're going to need, I'm just going to grab a huge handful, and now we're just going to stuff it. And what I'm going to be checking on this side is kind of how stuffed do you want it, because if you make it too stuffed, it might look a little wonky. So that's where kind of stuffing it and then taking these strings and pulling it closed, it will cooperate today, you'll be able to see like how much stuffing, like it needs more. So just grab a little bit, and we're just going to stuff it. You can kind of decide if you want certain spots stuffed more. Like I'm going to aim to stuff these ridges more than my pearl ridges. And sometimes it might help to break up this batting some before you put it in. And I'm kind of focusing on those nobbins area. And we're just going to go around and kind of shove more batting into those areas. I'm trying to keep these strings out of my way. Okay. My problem is I have to make sure the bag doesn't go on the floor because of my cat. Why things are fighting me so much today. Okay. So see, by stuffing into the ridges, the pearl ones more, we're going to get a little more pumpkinish. So we're stuffing, and we're stuffing. Again, it's however stuffed you want it. I'm using this to kind of decide, because you want to make sure you can be able to tie it off. So again, we need a little more stuffing. So we're going to kind of push it up, keeping our strands out. Okay, let's grab our last As you see, to get it closer, we're getting our pumpkin shape a little better. And if you squish it down a little bit, you kind of start seeing that it looks a little more like a pumpkin. And I'm just kind of working it in the areas that I wanted it to be in, deciding if I need more. That's all you're kind of do is work your way around. Okay. Now once you get it stuffed as you want it, again, you're pulling on the string to get it to close off. Right, and so we've got our little pumpkin. Okay, and now we're going to use our crochet hook, and just like we did with the drawstring, we're going to try to close this off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these strands, because again, they're not, might have messed up a little bit on the gather bind off, but that's okay. We're going to do the same thing we did before, going in the opposite direction, because again, this is going to be on the bottom, so it's okay if it's going to show. Just be mindful of your stuffing, so you don't have too much of it in the way. And then we're going to do just like we did with the drawstring, kind of give it a little knot to help close it off, a little double knot. Okay, and then we're going to do the same thing. We're going to go over this way, and we're going to get our working tails through, through here. I want both of you. No, I could get away with one, but I want both of them. My lord. I'm beginning to think this is... I've taken too long of a break from loom knitting. I can't do stuff anymore. Fine, we'll just use one of you. Okay, one of you come over with me. Alright. My padding out of the way. Okay. Again, as we're doing that, we're getting this to close off. Alright, we're getting it to close off more. So that's all you're going to do is kind of rotate around, getting at least one strand to follow you. See how it's just kind of working it closed? Once I get that good, I'm going to do... Okay, and then we're looking for like just closing off the areas, because it's a little hard to see, but you can definitely tell where the batting still is, so just work your crochet hook in. And I'm sure there's other ways you can do this. Some people might choose to sew it closed, which is kind of what we're doing in a way. So it's whatever method works for you. Again, this is the bottom. Nobody's going to really see it, so don't start criticizing your work too much. This is just a simple, fun project. And I would love to see what colors you guys would do your pumpkin in. So if you do this, make sure you head over to my Facebook page and share what pumpkin colors you used. And make sure you give the video a thumbs up if you're going to be making yourself some pumpkins for the Halloween or Thanksgiving time. I would really, again, love to see them. And always hit that subscribe button and the bell icon to be notified of future videos, as I do have other videos planned to share, both loom knitting and not loom knitting related crafts. So make sure you hit that subscribe button. Quit fighting me. Alright, we're going to go to a different spot. Ever feel like things just want to fight you when you know you can do something? Poke you back in there. Might be the batting causing me the problem this time. Okay. I promise this did not fight me that much when I did the sample pumpkin. Alright. Okay, and that's all I'm doing is I'm just going until it's closed off, which I will probably finish off camera, but that's all you're going to do is keep working your way around until it's as closed off as you can. And then you double knot it, and then you can fix your little thing and kind of give it a little scrunch to kind of get it that position you want. And then we have our cute little pumpkin. And again, if you want it to be stick down more, you could always kind of put some string up here and like tie it to kind of make it dip in. But again, I was going for a non-traditional looking pumpkin inspired project. So again, I'm just gonna finish closing this off a little more, and then I'll show you my sample pumpkin along with this again. Okay, so again, we started with this sample pumpkin. Okay, and then I think I did a pretty good job modifying it. So this one has a little bit more pumpkin feel. I mean, I closed that off. And again, it doesn't matter if it's wonky. We were going again for a non-traditional pumpkin. And I really like the stem. As you can see in the first one, it didn't really do much in terms of like curling it. So the curling added something different to it, and you can kind of see. Again, if I were to do this again, I might just stuff a little more on certain ones, but I actually like the way it came out. And I like it if I squish it down. It kind of looks a little more like a pumpkin shape. So I think it's pretty cute, and I'm hoping you guys like this and that you try this kind of non-traditional pumpkin color project, and let me know what you think about it, and let me know if you do this project. Like I said, I'd love to see you head over to my Facebook page. The links are in the description, and show me your pumpkin as well. Again, it kind of self-striped, but you can also see kind of where the colors changed, and I just think it came out really cute. And yeah, my little non-traditional pumpkin. Have a great day, everyone.